Snowflakes clung to the edges of my scarf as we stood behind the garage, his breath clouding in the cold air just inches from mine. The neighborhood was loud, kids yelling over sleds in the distance, car doors slamming from relatives arriving late, holiday music humming faintly from someone's Bluetooth speaker on the porch. But I heard none of it. Only him. His words still echoed in my head, "You're not happy. I see it." I should have walked away. I should have said something, anything. But I didn't. His face was close enough that I could count the tiny freckles below his eyes. My heart pounded with a rhythm that didn't feel like mine. One more second and... Before I begin the story and tell you how everything really happened, answer this question: do you agree that everyone deserves a second chance after cheating? The house smelled like stuffing and burnt sugar, and my kitchen was a battlefield. The turkey was overcooked, the cranberry sauce forgotten in the fridge, and the green bean casserole was bubbling like lava in its glass dish. My husband was in the living room, already one whiskey in, laughing at something his best friend had said. Football was blaring on the TV, Packers versus Lions. Classic Thanksgiving noise. I stood at the stove, ladling gravy and pretending I wasn't shaking. I hadn't seen him in nearly a year. My husband's best friend. He moved back from Denver 2 months ago and had shown up at our door with a bottle of wine and a crooked smile. I thought I was safe. I was wrong. He walked into the kitchen, holding 2 empty glasses. "Need a refill," he said, eyes flicking toward the pan in my hand. "You always did make the best gravy." I didn't answer. My voice caught in my throat, so I nodded and moved aside. His arm brushed mine. No one would notice, it was innocent. But it wasn't. "Where's the cranberry sauce?" my husband shouted from the living room. I blinked. "Fridge." "Too late now," he called back, laughing. The friend smiled, poured the drinks, and leaned on the counter. "You okay?" he asked quietly, too quietly for anyone else to hear. I nodded again. A lie, small and safe. Dinner was chaos. The table was too crowded, the turkey too dry, and the jokes too loud. I laughed where I was supposed to, passed plates, sipped wine. The friend sat across from me, 1 seat over. Close enough to make me aware of him, far enough to make it deniable. My husband toasted to old friends and second chances. Everyone cheered. I almost choked. After dessert, my husband fell asleep in the recliner, snoring faintly with the remote still in his hand. I started gathering plates, escaping the table. The friend joined me in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, stacking dishes like he belonged there. We worked in silence, the clinking of plates and the sound of water filling the sink the only noise between us. "I missed this," he said suddenly. "This?" I asked. "You. This house. The smell of cinnamon and bad coffee. The sound of you humming when you think no one hears." I froze. I hadn't hummed in years. Not since. "Don't," I said, sharper than I intended. He didn't apologize. "You don't smile like you used to." I turned back to the sink. "People change." "No," he said. "People forget who they were." That's not the same thing. I hated him for saying it. Because he wasn't wrong. Next morning, I realized we'd forgotten the cranberry sauce. My husband laughed it off, but I couldn't let it go. I insisted on going to Target. He offered to drive, but I made an excuse about needing the air. I didn't expect the friend to volunteer. "I'll come with. I need batteries anyway." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. In the car, we talked about nothing: weather, traffic, the new Starbucks opening downtown. He cracked jokes about people still wearing masks in 2025. I fake laughed until I realized I was real laughing. I hated that more. Inside Target, he grabbed his batteries. I found the cranberry sauce. We detoured for candles, then coffee, then ornaments. It wasn't about the shopping. It never was. On the way home, he turned down a side street and pulled into a tiny cafe I hadn't been to in years. "Come on," he said. "One coffee won't kill you." I didn't ask for this. I know. But I went in anyway. We sat near the window, sipping bitter coffee and avoiding eye contact. The tension was thick enough to chew. He leaned in, not touching, just close. "Why are you still pretending?" I looked out the window. "Because pretending is safer." "For who?" I didn't answer. We drove home in silence. I held the grocery bag in my lap like a shield. When we pulled into the driveway, he reached across to grab his batteries from the floor. Our hands brushed. He paused, looked at me, not hungry or eager, just waiting. I got out of the car. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A reminder from my Notes app. I opened it and stared in horror. It was a voice memo. 42 minutes long. The time stamp matched our drive. Somehow, I'd recorded the entire conversation. And it had synced to my husband's iPad. I stood in the hallway, clutching the phone like it was a grenade about to go off. My throat tightened as I stared at the screen, the voice memo still open, 42 minutes long, every word we said recorded and synced. I didn't remember hitting record. I didn't even remember pulling my phone out. But there it was, time-stamped, waiting to explode. My heart thudded in my ears as I swiped and deleted it. Then I remembered the sync. The iPad. My husband had been using it the night before to look up some barbecue recipe on YouTube. I rushed into the living room. The iPad was still on the side table, screen dark, charger still plugged in. I tapped it awake. Nothing on the screen. No open apps. No notifications. I opened the voice memo app. Empty. Relief swept through me, fast and shaky. I went into settings and disabled sync across all devices. My fingers trembled with every tap. I didn't care if I broke the cloud, I just wanted it gone. The door creaked behind me. "What are you doing?" my husband asked casually. I turned, too quickly. "Looking for the Wi-Fi password. The new modem isn't working on my phone." He walked in, rubbing his eyes. "Thought it was saved?" I gave a tight smile. "Apparently not." He nodded and walked back toward the kitchen. "He's coming by later to help hang the lights. Don't forget." I didn't. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I was still fixing my hair, irrationally. I opened the door before he could knock again. His eyes scanned mine, like he already knew what had happened. We didn't speak in the entryway. He followed me in, carrying a box of tangled string lights and zip ties. My husband appeared from the kitchen with a half-eaten sandwich and greeted him like nothing had changed. "Ready to climb the roof, man?" "Born ready," the friend said. His voice was steady. Mine wasn't. I kept busy wrapping garland around the banister. I could hear them laughing outside, moving the ladder, cursing the wind. It should have comforted me, how normal they sounded, but instead it made my skin crawl. This entire house felt like a stage set. And I was the only one who knew the script had changed. Later, while my husband was taking a call in the garage, the friend ducked inside to grab water. "You deleted it?" he asked, low. "Yes," I said. "All of it. From everything." He nodded, silent. "We can't do this again," I whispered. His eyes flicked to mine. "You keep saying that." But we both knew I would. That weekend, our church hosted a holiday food drive. I hadn't planned on going, but I needed somewhere to be. Somewhere crowded. Somewhere safe. I found myself sorting canned corn and boxed stuffing beside him. We worked in tight proximity, our hands brushing occasionally over soup cans and ramen packs. Neither of us spoke. The air buzzed with holiday cheer, children running around with red aprons, parents sipping cocoa, someone dressed as a snowman posing for photos. It felt detached, like watching someone else's life from behind glass. He passed me a box of macaroni and cheese. I reached for it at the same time. Our fingers met. I held the box tighter than necessary, then snatched it away. I didn't look at him. Not once. Later, after the last box was stacked, he asked if I wanted to help pick out decorations for my husband's birthday dinner. "It's next week," he said, "and you always make things look like a Hallmark set." "I don't think that's a good idea. It's just Hobby Lobby. In public. You love Hobby Lobby." He wasn't wrong. I said nothing for several seconds. Then I nodded. The drive was quiet. No music, no casual banter. I stared out the window as bare trees zipped past. The parking lot was full, apparently. Everyone in Wisconsin had the same idea. We wandered down the aisles, looking for paper banners and battery-powered candles. I kept my distance. He didn't. He found a set of wooden letters. "What about this?" We spelled his name out on the wall behind the cake. "Too much," I said, keeping my tone flat. "Still thinking about it?" "I'm trying not to." He shrugged, picked up a sparkler candle. "You trying not to forget, or trying not to remember?" I didn't answer. The checkout line was long. Families with carts full of glitter and pine cones. A couple bickering about wreath sizes. Kids touching everything they weren't supposed to. It was noisy, chaotic, almost comforting. Back in the car, he didn't start it right away. He sat with his hands on the steering wheel, staring ahead. "You deserve to feel something again," he said, barely louder than the hum of the heater. "Even if it's wrong." I closed my eyes. We drove in silence. At home, he walked me to the door, the box of decorations in his arms. I opened it and reached to take them. He didn't let go. Just stood there, holding the box between us, eyes locked on mine. We kissed. Then he handed me the box and left. I stood there, holding candles and string lights and cheap paper streamers, wondering what the hell I'd just done. That night, my husband surprised me. He came home with a grin and a bag of groceries. "Guess what?" he said, unloading things onto the counter: wine, chocolates, steaks, pasta. "What?" "We're going away next weekend. Lake Geneva. You and me." I froze. He smiled. "And get this, he's coming too. Says he wants to help set it all up and make it special for us. You know how good he is with the details." I dropped the box of streamers. They hit the floor, bursting open like confetti. My husband didn't notice. We haven't had a getaway in forever. It'll be good for all of us. All of us. I smiled. I nodded. Inside, everything was already unraveling. We arrived in Lake Geneva just before sunset. The snow along the roadside was freshly fallen, blanketing the town in a postcard-perfect calm that felt completely at odds with the storm inside my chest. The inn was beautiful, rustic, lit up with warm golden lights strung along the porch. My husband stepped out of the car first, whistling in approval. He stretched his arms and turned to the back seat. "This is gonna be great," he said. "You'll love it. The rooms are right by the lake." I forced a smile, pretending my fingers weren't clenched tight around the handle of my bag. Inside, the fireplace crackled in the lobby, and the scent of pine and cinnamon drifted in from a decorative wreath above the reception desk. My husband chatted easily with the receptionist, teasing about whether the hot chocolate was spiked. I stood beside him, nodding when necessary, silent when I could be. The room had a view of the frozen lake, a wide window framed by plaid curtains. My husband carried the bags in. The friend followed behind, casually tossing his overnight duffel into the corner like he was at home. "This place is cozy," he said. "Better than I expected." "We've got dinner reservations at 8, my husband said, digging through his suitcase for a button-down. "You two should go walk the market in the meantime. I've got that poker night with Dave and Rich down the road. Be back by 10. I turned toward him. "You're not coming to dinner?" "Tomorrow," he said, already halfway into the bathroom. "Tonight's just set up with the guys. You two go soak in the charm." I didn't look at the friend. I couldn't. The market was already buzzing. Lights dangled from the stalls, vendors shouting about handmade scarves and hot cider. Couples held hands, families took selfies in front of the oversized Christmas tree. We walked in silence through the crowd, our footsteps crunching on snow-packed ground. He stopped by a stall selling ornaments shaped like snowflakes. "You used to love these," he said. "I don't remember telling you that." "You didn't." We kept walking. At the end of the street, the crowd thinned, and a small fire pit crackled near a bench facing the lake. No one else was around. He sat first. I hesitated before joining him. "I didn't ask for this," I said. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." He turned toward me, voice low. "You keep pretending it's all just happening to you. Like you're a passenger." I looked away. "Stop." The fire crackled, the silence between us tighter than ever. He stood suddenly. "Come on. Let's go." We didn't speak on the walk back. But our steps slowed near the entrance to the inn. The cold wrapped around us, breath visible in sharp white puffs. He turned, close. His eyes held something that made everything tilt sideways. We kissed. It lasted only a second, but it ripped everything wide open. The door opened behind us. "Hey," my husband called cheerfully. "I was just about to come find you too." I turned so fast I nearly lost my balance. He walked toward us, grinning, holding a small box wrapped in red ribbon. "I got you something," he said, handing it to me. "Figured I've been kind of distant lately." I stared at the box. My hands were ice. He laughed. "You gonna open it or just admire the paper?" Inside was a silver necklace, delicate, simple, with a tiny charm in the shape of a tree. "You said once you liked the old oak by our first apartment," he said. "Remember?" I nodded, hard in my throat. He looked between us. "You too cold? Come on. I'll get the car. Let's grab something sweet on the way back." He turned and walked ahead. I stared down at the charm resting in my palm. It shimmered under the lights. Beside me, the friend whispered, "You okay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The drive back to the inn was filled with music and my husband's humming. He talked about the guys, the inn's breakfast menu, the snowstorm supposedly coming Monday. I responded with one-word replies. The friend said nothing at all. Back in the room, I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and ran cold water over my wrists. My reflection looked like someone else entirely. My skin pale. My eyes unfamiliar. When I stepped out, my husband was already in bed, flipping through a local magazine. "Don't forget, breakfast ends at 10, he said, without looking up. I nodded, climbed into bed, and turned away from him. The next morning was all cinnamon rolls and coffee, him chatting with the innkeeper about fishing tours and the state of the packers. I sat at the table, pretending to listen, pretending to breathe normally. The friend joined us halfway through, looking as collected as always. He poured himself coffee, took a seat, and said nothing that wasn't expected. By noon, the three of us were out shopping again, this time at a nearby winter boutique. Scarves, candles, artisan cheese samples. He stayed just close enough to remind me he existed. My husband wrapped a blue scarf around my neck and kissed my forehead. "You're freezing," he said. I smiled through clenched teeth. Back at the inn, as the sun dipped low and the lake turned orange beneath the sky, I finally let myself sit alone for 5 minutes outside on the porch. Wrapped in the new scarf, I stared into the distance, trying to feel something other than pressure. My husband came out, holding his phone. "We'll need to leave earlier tomorrow," he said. "Storm's coming sooner than expected." "Okay." He held up his phone. "Hey, by the way, look what I found while going through my old Google Drive." I turned toward him slowly. "It's that dumb old photo of us by the lake from years ago. You were holding a hot chocolate and glaring at me for making a bad joke. Classic." He laughed, then scrolled further. "Oh, and this. Look at this." He showed me the screen. A screenshot of a social media story. Taken just last night. In the background, me and the friend. Standing too close. His hand barely visible behind my back. No tags. No captions. Just enough. His face didn't change. He didn't speak. He just stared at the image. And then at me. He didn't say a word. Just stood there on the porch, holding the phone with the screen still lit. The story image was blurry, poorly lit, someone else's casual snap from a night out. But we were there. Me and him. His hand hovering too close. My expression caught somewhere between awareness and guilt. It wasn't proof of anything. And yet, it was. I reached out to lower the phone, but he stepped back slightly. Still silent. Still watching me. "We were walking back to the inn," I said, keeping my voice steady. "That was taken at the market." He looked back at the screen, then tapped it off, slid the phone into his pocket, and nodded. "Yeah," he muttered. "The market." Then he turned and walked back into the room. I stood outside until I couldn't feel my fingers. The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. He didn't say much over breakfast. No joking with the waitstaff, no comments about the syrup or the coffee or the snowstorm building up outside. Just silent chewing and the occasional nod. I couldn't tell if he believed me, or if he'd just decided not to ask. Back in the car, the drive home was even worse. 3 hours of highway, icy patches, and uncomfortable music playing low from the radio. I stared out the window while the trees blurred past. The friend sat in the back seat, unusually still. I could feel the tension radiating off both of them like heat. No one spoke for miles. At home, things dropped back into routine as if nothing had changed. My husband spent most of his time in the garage, working on some old project he hadn't touched in years. I cleaned rooms that didn't need cleaning. Rearranged spice racks. Washed the windows. Anything to keep from sitting still. Anything to keep from thinking. The friend began texting less. Then not at all. The silence between us was louder than the storm had been. Then Christmas decorations arrived, 2 huge plastic bins from the attic. My husband carried them into the living room, wiped the dust off, and said we should finally make this place look cheerful again. I unpacked snow globes and garland while he wrestled with the tangled lights. It was the most normal we had been in weeks. But even in that normal, I could feel the ground shifting beneath us. That evening, he announced we should go get a tree, a real one this year, not that fake plastic stick from the basement. I almost said no. But I nodded instead. He invited his friend to come. Extra pair of hands, he said. We drove out to the Christmas tree farm the next day. The air was sharp, and the fields were filled with families wrapped in coats and laughter. Children darted between trees. A woman in a red parka handed out maps and hot cider. My husband took charge, walking ahead with determination, looking for a tall one, but not too wide. The friend walked beside me, slightly behind. I didn't look at him, but I could feel the weight of every unsaid word between us. We reached the back section of the lot where the trees were denser and fewer families wandered. My husband crouched to check a stump for rot. The friend leaned in slightly and said, "We should talk." "No," I said quickly. "Not here." "Then when?" My husband stood. "Found one." He called us over. We both stepped toward him like nothing had happened. The woman from the entrance offered to take our picture before we left. She held up her phone and said, "Say Merry Christmas." My husband wrapped an arm around me. The friend stood beside him. We smiled. The camera clicked. I wondered if I'd remember this smile as the last time anything felt even slightly normal. That night, we hosted a dinner party, just neighbors. I wasn't in the mood, but my husband insisted. Said it'd be good for everyone. The house smelled like roasted ham and cinnamon candles. I wore a sweater I hadn't touched in years. Guests trickled in, shedding boots and scarves, complimenting the tree. My husband poured drinks, laughed, played host like he was born for it. The friend arrived late, holding a bottle of wine and that same casual grin that used to make me feel seen. Now it just made me uneasy. We sat at the dining table, 8 of us, packed elbow to elbow. The friend sat across from me. My husband to my right. The conversation flowed around us like a river we weren't in. Someone made a joke about winter potholes, and everyone laughed. Except him. Except me. He leaned forward and said, "Remember that trip to Michigan? Your tire blew out in the middle of nowhere." I froze. My husband laughed. "Oh man, I forgot about that. You two were stuck for hours." I smiled too late. He smiled too easily. Later, I was in the kitchen refilling the cider when my husband stepped in behind me. He reached for the mugs, then paused. "You were quiet tonight," he said. "Just tired." He nodded. "You seem tired a lot lately." I turned away, grabbed the tray, walked out. After dessert, while guests mingled and coats were retrieved, I spotted the friend by the front door, holding his own jacket. He looked at me. I looked away. My husband helped an older neighbor down the steps. The friend leaned in slightly. "This isn't sustainable," he said. "I know," I whispered. He opened the door and left. I went upstairs that night before my husband. Stared at the ceiling in the dark for a long time. He came to bed late. Didn't say anything. The next morning, I picked a fight. Something small, about the trash bags or the laundry. I don't even remember what. I needed the noise. I needed something to break the silence. He apologized without fighting back. Said he was sorry I was feeling stressed. I hated how kind he was being. New Year's was approaching fast, and I needed an excuse. Any excuse. I told him my sister wanted to meet for shopping in the city. "Just us girls," I said. "She wants help picking out curtains." He didn't question it. He never did. The friend had a family cabin near the edge of the lake, quiet and rarely used. We met there. I told myself it was just to talk. Just one conversation. To clear the air. To make a decision. We spent night together. The next morning, I made coffee in the small, drafty kitchen while he slept. The lake outside the window was covered in fog. I didn't know what to feel. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from a friend. Nothing strange. Just a forwarded social media story. Is this you in the back? LOL. I opened it. A photo. At the cabin. We were blurry, almost invisible. But we were there. And now, someone else had seen it. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and throat. The story wasn't even about us. It was someone showing off the snowy cabin through the window of their car, but in the background, out of focus and unintentional, was us. My coat, his arm, the unmistakable porch railing. The timestamp was from last night. It had already expired. 24 hours and it would vanish. But that meant for several hours, we had been publicly visible, even if unintentionally, and that was enough to unravel everything. I didn't say anything. I didn't tell him. I just closed the app, deleted the message, and stared out at the frozen lake, my coffee untouched and cold in my hand. Back home, the silence continued. My husband had stopped asking questions. Not because he wasn't curious, but because he was watching. Quietly. Carefully. I could feel it in the way his eyes lingered when I passed by, the way he stayed up a few minutes later each night after I went to bed, the way he left the iPad charger near the couch but didn't use it. He was waiting. For what, I didn't know. Or maybe I did. The friend was quiet too. The messages slowed, then stopped entirely. He didn't answer when I sent a single question mark one afternoon. I told myself it was fine. I told myself we needed distance. But the quiet grew louder by the day. It was my husband who finally broke it. He suggested brunch. Just us, he said. No friends. No distractions. Just pancakes and catching up. I agreed, reluctantly. The diner was half full, mostly older couples and two overworked waitresses in Christmas sweaters. We sat in the corner booth by the window. He ordered black coffee. I ordered tea. He folded his hands on the table and didn't smile. I know something's been off, he said, voice low. I stared down at the laminated menu. Things have just been busy. You're not a good liar. I didn't look up. I didn't respond. He leaned back and exhaled slowly. I don't want to fight. I just want to understand what's happening to us. His words were too kind. Too calm. I wanted him to yell, to accuse, to make it easier for me to collapse under guilt. But he didn't. He just waited. I swallowed hard and gave him the only thing I could, a half-truth. I feel stuck. His eyes didn't blink. With me? No. With everything. The house. The silence. The sameness. He nodded. Then we should change something. I didn't know what to say to that. After brunch, we drove home mostly in silence. I thought it would end there. But it didn't. Later that evening, he asked if I wanted to go bowling. Like it was 1998 again. I invited him too, he said casually. We haven't done something together in a while. I froze. I thought you said no distractions. He shrugged. Sometimes distraction is the only way to survive. We went. The three of us. Just like old times. The alley hadn't changed much. Fluorescent lights, sticky shoes, outdated pop music humming from the speakers. A teenage girl behind the counter handed us our lane number and grinned. "Date night, huh?" she joked. My husband laughed. "Almost." The friend smiled faintly. I said nothing. We bowled 3 games. My husband joked more than usual. He was louder than usual. I couldn't tell if he was performing or unraveling. I lost every round. The friend let me. After the last frame, my husband grabbed a beer from the snack counter and took a seat by the arcade. He looked exhausted. Like he'd used every bit of his energy pretending not to notice something he absolutely did. The friend walked beside me to the car. He opened the passenger door for me, but neither of us spoke. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was final. When we got home, I headed straight for the bathroom and locked the door. I stared at myself in the mirror until the air around me felt foreign. Then I walked out, went into the guest room, and started deleting everything. Every photo. Every message. Every voice note. Gone. I disconnected iCloud. Cleared call logs. Deleted the hidden folder I didn't think I'd ever actually create. I scrubbed it all away, pixel by pixel. My hands shook the entire time. I told myself this was closure. The next morning, the house was quiet again. My husband was still in bed when I got up. I walked past the living room and paused. The iPad was gone. It wasn't on the charger. It wasn't on the couch. I checked the kitchen. The counter. The hallway. The nightstand. Nowhere. I didn't ask. I couldn't. By late afternoon, he hadn't mentioned it either. He stayed in the garage most of the day, working on some shelving he said he was building for storage. The friend didn't text. I didn't reach out. I baked cookies, muffins, banana bread. I couldn't stop moving. I couldn't stop needing something to do with my hands. Flour dusted my sleeves. The timer dinged. I pulled out another tray. Set it on the rack. Started a new bowl. And then I heard it. From the garage. The door closed too loudly. Footsteps. He came in, holding something. The iPad. He placed it on the counter. And walked away. My throat tightened as I stepped toward it. The screen was locked. The wallpaper was the same, our wedding photo from Michigan, the one where he was looking at me instead of the camera. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I stood there for a long time. Then, that night, after he went to bed, I poured a glass of water, sat on the couch, and waited. The friend knocked on the door. I didn't answer. He knocked again, softer. I opened it just enough. He looked tired. Worn. Older than he had a week ago. "I can't do this anymore," he said. I nodded. "I know." He looked like he wanted to say more. Then he turned and walked away. I closed the door. Went to bed. I didn't sleep. The next morning, my husband didn't speak. He made coffee. Put his keys in his coat pocket. Then asked if I needed anything from the hardware store. I said no. He left. I stared at the space he had just stood in. And that was when I realized something had shifted. Not just between us, but in him. The sound of the door closing behind him echoed longer than it should have. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, still holding the dish towel, watching the morning light shift across the countertop. There was something off in the air, not just between us now, but inside him. Not anger, not suspicion. Distance. Like he had finally accepted something and decided not to speak it out loud. The rest of the day passed like a slideshow. I moved from task to task, laundry, vacuuming, emptying the dishwasher, without really registering any of it. My hands were busy, but my mind felt like it had been disconnected. Every time I paused too long, I felt it creeping in, the silence, the growing distance, the knowing. By early evening, I caught myself standing by the front window, staring out at the driveway. The snow had mostly melted, but the sky hinted at more coming. I waited, unconsciously, for a car that didn't belong to us. But it never came. Instead, he walked back in around 6, brushed the snow off his coat, and handed me a small brown bag from the hardware store. "New hooks for the garage shelving," he said. I took it from him, nodded, said nothing. He poured himself a glass of water, sat on the edge of the couch, and scrolled through his phone like it was any normal day. The TV remained off. There was no radio, no background noise. Just the ticking of the old clock above the mantel, louder than ever. That night, I couldn't sleep again. He lay beside me, breathing steady, back turned. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how many nights like this we had lived through without realizing how many cracks had formed under the surface. The next morning, I got up before him, pulled on my coat, and left the house without saying where I was going. I drove without a destination. Ended up at the park where we used to bring coffee on Sunday mornings, years ago. I sat on a bench, watching a group of kids throw snowballs at each other with unfiltered joy. I envied them. Their simplicity. Their ignorance of complexity. By the time I got home, he was gone again. No note. No text. I didn't call. I made myself a sandwich, ate it standing at the counter, staring blankly out the window. The tension in the house had changed. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, like fabric being slowly torn instead of sliced. The friend hadn't contacted me in over a week. No calls. No texts. No accidental run-ins. It was as if he had erased himself completely. I wasn't sure if I hated him for that or if it made things easier. That afternoon, my husband appeared in the doorway with an idea. "We should all go bowling again," he said. I looked up, confused. "We just went." He smiled, too calmly. "Yeah, but that night felt off. Let's do it again. Same crew. Maybe invite the Thompsons too. Make it a group thing." I paused. "You already talked to him?" "Texted him this morning. He's in." My stomach tightened, but I nodded. Okay. That night, we drove to the alley again. This time, the place was busier. Teenagers filled half the lanes, the jukebox blared old rock songs, and there was a smell of popcorn and fryer grease in the air. The Thompsons met us there, overly cheerful, loud, joking about how they hadn't bowled in years. The friend arrived last, coat zipped high, face unreadable. He greeted my husband with a quick hug, nodded politely at me, and joined the others like nothing had ever happened. I watched him all night, but he didn't look at me once. He cracked jokes with the Thompsons, helped reset a stubborn lane, offered to grab nachos from the counter. My husband was in a good mood again, smiling, shouting encouragement after every strike. I felt like a prop. A placeholder for someone else's wife. At one point, I dropped a ball too soon and it thudded awkwardly down the lane. Everyone laughed. "You're rusty," the friend called out from the table behind us. I turned, finally catching his eyes. For the briefest second, I thought I saw something there, regret, maybe, or apology, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. When the game ended, we said goodbyes in the parking lot. Everyone hugged, promised to do it again. He hugged my husband last. "Drive safe," he said. I didn't wait for him to turn to me. I got in the car and closed the door. On the way home, my husband was quiet, his mood deflating gradually. "You didn't say much tonight," he finally said. I stared out the window. I didn't have much to say. Fair enough. We pulled into the driveway. I went upstairs before he finished parking. The next morning, I found the iPad again. Not hidden. Not locked. Lying on the kitchen table. Screen dark. I picked it up, hesitated, then unlocked it. No open apps. No voice memos. Nothing left. But something new was in the Notes app. Just one entry. Titled, "Just in Case." I opened it. Inside was a list. Dates. Times. Places. All the moments. Not proof. Just memories, traced back and categorized. At the bottom, one line in bold. "I don't need evidence. I needed honesty. You chose something else." I stood there, not moving. He walked in moments later. Saw me with the iPad. Didn't flinch. Just poured his coffee and said, "We're having company tonight." I invited my sister. Haven't seen her in years. I placed the iPad down slowly. "Okay," I said. That evening, we set the table for 3. He made pasta, opened wine, played old music in the background. He was charming, relaxed, even playful. I played along, laughing when appropriate, answering questions, helping serve. His sister was kind. Warm. Told stories about their childhood, asked about our last vacation, complimented my sweater. We smiled for hours. After she left, he kissed my cheek and thanked me for being gracious. Then handed me an envelope. I held it like it might burn through my skin. He walked away before I could open it. Inside was a plane ticket. One way. To Maine. Departure, 3 days from now. No note. No explanation. Just silence. I stared at the envelope for a long time before I finally slid the ticket back inside and placed it on the dresser. The idea of Maine wasn't foreign. We used to talk about going there. Before everything changed. Before life became obligation and routine and polite nods in the kitchen. I hadn't thought about that trip in years. For the next 2 days, he said nothing about it. He acted as if the ticket didn't exist. I didn't bring it up either. We moved through the house like cautious guests at a party we both regretted attending. He mowed the snow-damp lawn. I rearranged the bookshelves. We cooked dinner, cleaned up, slept in the same bed without touching. The morning of the flight, he handed me a thermos of coffee and simply said, "I'll drop you off." I didn't ask if he meant it as goodbye or a pause. I didn't ask anything. I just nodded. We drove in silence. The highway was clear, winter light dull and pale across the windshield. He tapped the steering wheel rhythmically. A nervous habit. Or maybe just a filler for all the things he wasn't saying. At the airport, he parked but didn't get out. I opened the door, stepped out, and hesitated. He looked up at me. "There's no message in the ticket," he said. "It's just a place. That's all." I nodded. Closed the door. Walked toward the terminal without turning around. The flight was quiet. Sparse passengers. A mother with a sleeping toddler. 2 older men in flannel jackets playing chess on a tray table. I stared out the window the entire time, watched the land stretch out below in patchy white and brown. I didn't cry. I didn't feel much of anything at all. When I landed, I followed the directions he'd left scribbled on a piece of scrap paper beneath the ticket. Rental car parked in section B5. Gas tank full. key behind the visor. The road out of the airport curved through forests and past frozen lakes. Everything looked like a postcard. Clean. Remote. Empty. The cabin was exactly how I imagined it. Wood-paneled, 2 rocking chairs on the porch, a dusting of snow on the steps. A faded red canoe leaned against the far side of the house. There was a tiny welcome mat with a moose on it. Inside, the heat was already on. A small fire crackled in the fireplace, clearly lit not long before I arrived. A note on the coffee table read, "Take time. I won't be calling." There was no name on it. I unpacked slowly. Just a few clothes, toiletries, a book I hadn't touched in months. I made tea, sat by the fire, and listened to the logs snap and shift. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't check my phone. I sat in silence for hours. And it was loud. Night fell quickly. By 9 p.m., the world outside the windows was pitch black. No streetlights, no headlights, no movement. I lit a candle, poured a small glass of wine, and pulled the blanket over my shoulders. At some point, I dozed off in the chair. And then there was a knock at the door. It was soft. Once. Then again. I froze. No one knew I was here. Not my sister. Not friends. Not even neighbors back home. I hadn't spoken a word to anyone since I left. The only person who knew where I was him. I stood, heart pounding, and walked slowly toward the door. Another knock. Gentle. Not rushed. Not forceful. I opened it just a crack. A woman stood on the porch, soaked from the rain, strands of gray hair stuck to her cheeks, a canvas bag over one shoulder. Her face was unfamiliar. Older, maybe mid-60s, eyes tired but clear. "You don't know me," she said calmly. "But you need to hear the truth about your husband." I didn't move. I couldn't. She reached into her coat, pulled out a small velvet box, and placed it carefully on the porch railing between us. Then she stepped back, as if waiting for me to decide. I didn't ask anything. I didn't say a word. The wind picked up behind her, whistling through the trees. And then everything went still.